I have been a big fan of the Dead Space franchise for a long time now, so there was no question in my mind if I was going to get this game or not. While I do have very mixed feelings about Dead Space 3, I can say that overall it was a solid experience. Like in the previous two games, you play as Isaac Clarke on his journey to protect mankind from the mysterious Makers. This time, however, the game mostly takes place on the planet Tau of Atlantis, and it's Isaac's job to investigate a new necromorph outbreak and to figure out a way to stop it. Alongside Isaac to help with this scary experience is Carter and Allie, which do help in the story but aren't really a big factor in how the story ends. Amongst all this chaos is an awkward, predictable love triangle which, let's be honest, no one cared about. Not only was it pointless, but it was also almost embarrassing. For example, an epic near-death experience would happen, Isaac would hug Allie, and her boyfriend would be jealous. I mean, come on mate, there are bigger things to worry about here. Even with a cliche bad guy and terrible love triangle, the story is still a solid experience, and to help make things a little longer and more personal, they have added side missions which are optional. The gameplay will feel instantly familiar to anyone who has played a Dead Space game before. While they have added a few new features, the core of the gameplay remains intact, and because of this, Dead Space 3 still feels like a survival horror game. Along with the usual monsters you have to fight, they have added other human enemies to some sections of the game. Because of this, they have added a minor cover system which is only used in those sequences, but does make you swap your strategy up a little. The biggest feature to hit Dead Space 3 is the weapon customization. Throughout the game, you will come across supplies, which then lets you create or modify weapons. Just say you want your plasma cutter to have a stasis ability on it, then you can do that. Same with electricity damage, or even a second attachment to your gun, like a plasma cutter with a shotgun attachment on it also. It can be a little overwhelming at first, and I felt like the small tutorial they had didn't help me at all. But once you get the hang of it, it becomes a great little feature to make your playing experience unique. Another new feature is the co-op. While it does kind of get rid of the alone survival feeling, it is a great addition to the game. You can share weapon blueprints and add attachments on your guns that help your partner. It truly is a team effort. However, because Carter, your co-op partner, is actually a part of the story, he does make some very strange appearances in the single player story. One moment you were fighting a giant monster alone, and in the cutscene after, Carter pops up like he was there helping, which makes things feel very awkward. A problem that has plagued every Dead Space game is its repetitive missions. You go to a location, activate a few machines, and repeat that over and over, and Dead Space 3 is no different. Even though the combat is still fun, the missions are just average, and you really start to notice this about halfway through the game. What Dead Space is to me is a game with action that surprises me. It comes out of nowhere and scares me to bits. Dead Space 3, however, did not do this for me. This time around, combat is such a frequent thing that it gets way too predictable. Like I mentioned before, the combat is tremendous fun, but it also is way too common, and it really takes away that unique scared feeling I got from the previous two games. What Dead Space 3 does perfectly is the graphics and the sound. Throughout the game you will see amazing views that will leave you speechless and wishing they were real. From the sound to the monsters to the grunts Isaac makes, the sound is pitch perfect, pun intended. Dead Space 3 is a perfect example of how to betray your franchise but at the same time still make a solid game that people will enjoy. The story, while being a tad bland, does a good job at keeping you interested. Even though the gameplay is repetitive and predictable, it's still fun and exciting. The new features such as weapon customization and the co-op is a very welcome feature, and the graphics and sounds are perfect. Overall, I give Dead Space 3 an 8 out of 10.